Hey there. I'm Sully, and as always, welcome back to the Gun Club. Now, this video is going to get a little bit heavy. Before we start, though, I want to introduce myself. For those of y'all who don't know me, we've been getting a lot of new folks in, and that's really cool. If you like what we're doing, hey, give us a like, share it out, subscribe to the channel. We're trying to build out good, reliable content here and basically debunk a lot of the stupid stuff out there. Now, my name is Mike Sullivan. I'm a firearms instructor in South Carolina. I've got close to 30 years service in various public safety applications, from law enforcement, EMS, fire suppression. I've been an instructor in all three at various stages of my career. I'm currently semi-retired. I'm actually an EMS educator. I run an EMS training institution full-time, and I also teach firearms in various self-defense courses on the side as well. I've got the background in this stuff, and one thing I try to do is I try to go into these big national level shootings and sort of debunk a few of the lies that are in there. Normally, I don't do it this close on top of something happening, and that's why that says preliminary report, because guess what? This is not the end of this, but there's so much bad information going around. I just couldn't keep my mouth shut anymore. I decided there's a few things that needed to be shared so people have a little bit different understanding of what happened. Also, there's some controversy here, and we'll talk about that. Now, for those of y'all who don't know, in Charlotte, North Carolina, on the 29th of April, there was a situation that occurred. US Marshals Service team went to a house to serve several felony warrants, and at that time, they came under fire. By the time it was over, there were 4 law enforcement officers deceased, 1 U.S. Marshal, 2 people from the North Carolina Department of Corrections who were assigned to the Fugitive Task Force, and 1 Charlotte-Mecklenburg police officer. In addition to that, there were 4 officers wounded, 3 Charlotte-Mecklenburg officers, and another U.S. Marshal individual from the task force. Now, a lot of people have been talking about this. One of the things I've heard is, well, you know, these no-knock raids at Dark 100 or the crack of dawn, you know, they do this and what they get. Okay, it wasn't a no-knock, and it wasn't at the crack of dawn. It happened at 1:30 in the afternoon. So anyone wants to say it was a no-knock or this is what they get for busting in someone's door with a raid, it wasn't a raid. It wasn't a no-knock. This was a very calm, orderly warrant service. There was a gentleman in the house who had multiple warrants. Something else I've heard. One of the warrants was indeed for possession of a firearm by a convicted felon. That's illegal in all 50 states. Well, somebody said, well, this is what they get when they try gun confiscation. Besides, even if he was a felon, he should have his rights back. Now, if someone is a convicted felon, they've lost their right to own firearms. There are some in the 2A community, myself included, who say, well, maybe that shouldn't be 100% across the board. Is there some way that some of these people, not everybody, should be able to get their rights back? Now, some people say everyone should get their rights back. When they get out of jail, they should be allowed to go out and own. I think that largely depends on what they've been convicted of. If they've been convicted of multiple violent offenses, I'd probably be less likely to want to restore them than if they got caught, say, insider trading like Martha Stewart. I mean, let's face it, Martha Stewart never shot anybody. Now, technically, she's a convicted felon, but she never did anything violent. I wouldn't have a problem with restoring her rights to own or carry a firearm. Not a problem. On the other side of the coin, this guy, he wasn't one of those people. This gentleman has priors dating back to 2009, and at one point someone said that he had over 49 charges since 2001. Some of these include felon with a firearm, fleeing to elude law enforcement, eluding arrest, reckless driving, a host of different marijuana-related charges, burglary charges. This gentleman has been a problem to society and to the normal world as a whole kind of frequently. If you've got 49 charges since 01, or even 10 charges since 01, probably you forfeited that 2A right. I'm sorry, That's my thought. You can yell at me if you want. However, it wasn't a no knock. It wasn't in the middle of the night. They walked up in the middle of the day to pick him up. He hadn't appeared at court. He had outstanding warrants from that, as well as felon in possession of a firearm charges, as well as charges for fleeing to elude law enforcement. Now, some people will say, well, why'd they go to his house? Why didn't they wait till he was out and around somewhere so we could end up in a high-speed pursuit with him? I mean, let's face it. No matter what the officers did, no matter how they pulled this off, they're probably going to be wrong if it has a bad outcome. If they wait till he comes out and he's going to the grocery store, they pull up behind him and blue light him. Well, he's got several fleeing to elude. So he gets in a 100-mile-an-hour chase and he hits some innocent family. And then the next question is, why didn't they just wait till he was at his house to pick him up? If you think back to when Kim Potter was involved in her situation where she thought she had pulled her taser, but actually had her firearm, they said, well, he was fleeing law enforcement. Why did they even bother to try to stop him? Why didn't they just let him go and then drive out to his house? Well, sometimes when you drive out to their house, they've got more stuff and more fortifications, and they're ready for you, and they're waiting, and you're walking into a kind of a buzzsaw of sorts. Again, I'm not going to get into the tactics of it and everything else, but I want to debunk the it wasn't a no-knock raid. They didn't kick in anyone's door at midnight. It wasn't, just for having a firearm. There were a lot of reasons they were there to pick him up. And again, just because he may or may not be armed, should he be allowed to ignore going to court? I just won't go. And when they come to get me, I'll shoot them. Well, the officers, as they approached the house, began taking fire from inside the house, the second floor. He had the officers pinned down for a while. A couple of officers wounded. They called for backup. And he eventually came running out the door with an AR platform rifle and a .40 caliber handgun, and he was neutralized by law enforcement in the front yard. However, at that point, they were still taking fire from inside the house. They're not sure just exactly how or why at the moment. They finally had SWAT there and everything else. After a long standoff, they had a female and a 17-year-old boy come out. They're being questioned as persons of interest at this point. No decision or charging has been made on them. Another thing I've heard, and this again is so troubling because it's so wrong, somebody pointed out that over the course of the last year, North Carolina changed their firearm purchasing policies. Prior to this, and I say this having worked in North Carolina and lived there for 8 years, prior to the change that went through last year, in order to purchase a firearm, you had to get a permit from your local sheriff certifying that you were of good moral character and worthy of having the actual right to purchase a firearm. They were fairly inexpensive, and you could get 2 or 3 at a time if you were going to, say, a gun show. But even with that, you still had to do a background check, which is standard at any FFL dealer in the country. Any dealer in the country, any licensed dealer in the country. I keep saying that because what I'm seeing online is, well, North Carolina made it easier to get a gun. How'd that work out for you? Okay. They only eliminated that one purchasing step of going through the sheriff's office. Now, that law that you had to go through the sheriff's office and get a permit and be of good moral character has a law that was been around since, the mid to late 1800s. What was going on in this country in the mid to late 1800s? Who would be considered back in those days, of good moral character, allowed to purchase a firearm to defend themselves? And who wouldn't? Because you had to go to the sheriff in town, and the sheriff could say yay or nay. It'd take 5 days to do it, and pretty much said, nope, sorry, you're not worthy. I'm not giving you a permit, and you couldn't buy. It was a ridiculous old holdover law, and it was a holdover of one of the most racist gun laws in the world. So the fact they got rid of it and moved North Carolina into modern day, where you don't need 5 days to wait to get a permit because they can do a national instant background check, NICS, on like a 4473 form that you fill out at any dealer in the country. Yeah. So They didn't make it so criminals could easily buy guns. They didn't change that at all. Beyond that, this gentleman could never have bought a gun under the old rules or under the current rules. Somebody either A, bought the guns for him, somebody, maybe he stole them, he broke in somewhere. Again, he's got some burglary history there going on, so who knows what he did. He did not buy them through any licensed dealer anywhere. These were hot guns. Or possibly one of the people, the female, a female or a 17-year-old, so I'm guessing maybe the female, maybe she bought them for him, which is illegal. It's a straw purchase. So we know that criminals aren't going to follow the law. We know this gentleman made pretty much a pattern of not following the law. So once again, all the gun laws in the world didn't do anything. Tragically, they lost 4 officers up there, 4 more wounded. Again, hopefully they recover fully and are back on the road soon. But, no, it wasn't a no-knock. No, they didn't raid him solely for being a felon and having a gun. There was a bunch of reasons. No, they didn't make it so simple for someone to go buy a gun. Their change had no change, or the change they made had no effect whatsoever on this gentleman, and the change was only to make it a little bit streamlined for law-abiding citizens, of which this gentleman did not join that club. That's all I've got on this, folks. Hope you've enjoyed it. Hope you've learned something. If you did, like us, give us a thumbs up, share the channel out, follow us. We try to cut through some of the BS with all this stuff. Personally, I'm all for the 2A, and I don't think the media does us justice a lot of times. So, what do? We'll put the real world out here and let the truth be free. Bye. Be safe.